Hello Stampers, and welcome to Laura's Stamp Pad. Today I wanted to show you some ways to use your ribbon that is a little out of the ordinary. This is also a great way to use up scraps. All of the pieces that I'm actually going to use to show these, I just pulled from my little scrap bin. So they're all little pieces that I'm able to use for different projects by adding them in a different way than just a knot or a bow or something like that. So we're going to go through each of those fun ways to use your ribbon so that you can use up those scraps that you have, or so that you can add fun new ways to add ribbon to your project. I will say that ribbon is probably my go-to embellishment when it comes to working on a card, that or like a rhinestone pearl or something like that. So you can see on the back of this one, I have that little squiggle of a ribbon on the background. So it definitely adds, you know, some texture. It adds a little bit of dimension. Of course, I do have the greeting popped up on Dimensionals. But for this one, I just wanted to show you how I did that. So here I just have a circle, and I'm actually going to use some of my, this is the Calypso Coral. So the one thing I use is ribbon and Stampin Dimensionals, and then you can get any sort of look. So here are my Stampin Dimensionals. I simply will lay the ribbon down with as much as I want coming off. If I'm going to trim that, I'm going to want to allow a little bit more. And I'm just going to set a dimensional down to secure that. Then I'm going to loop it around and set another dimensional. And depending on how far you want your loop, just go out farther or a lot less. That's all up to you. And then again, I'm going to do the same thing over on the other side. Loop it around, and I'm going to stick my dimensional there in the center, which I know not much of it is holding onto the cardstock. So I'm just going to add a second one. Now, or a fourth one, I guess, at this point. So now I can just trim off my end. And then you have that fabulous little zigzag on the back of your project. Of course, depending on how big your image is, sometimes I add, you know, additional dimensionals to make sure it's nice and secure, or to make sure that it's nice and even and I don't have a flat spot whenever I put it on my project. So that's how I did just the little zigzag back and forth on the back of the greeting. This one I wanted to show you where I did the sequin trim. So for that, I have this green one. Of course, you always want to stamp first before you get ready to do this, because it'll be quite bumpy after you get done doing this. So you definitely won't be able to stamp on it once you've already done this backing. So for this one, I'm just going to take some gold sequin trim, and I'm going to add a loop. Now, one of the things when working with sequin trim is make sure that you're, like, this will be the front of your project. This will be the front. And so when you flip it over, you want to make sure that your sequins has that, that little piece, like that little thread piece that's on the back of the sequin. Like you can see, this side has that nice shiny look, and then this side has that thread. You want to make sure that the thread is facing up and that you're putting the dimensionals on top of the thread piece, so that when you do flip it over, you have those gorgeous sequins on the back. So there I just made one little loop, and now I'm going to make a loop down at the bottom. So I'm just going to secure another dimensional down there and make a loop down here. And again, this is all just personal preference, so just play with it, have fun, just squiggle it around, and it'll look absolutely fabulous. And then now I'm just going to trim off my sequin trim. So like, it looks like some weird crazy thing there, but then whenever you flip it over, it's got those fabulous little pieces. I might have gone a little too big on this one. I might have wanted to go maybe a little wider, which sometimes you can always pop off the little Stampin' Dimensional and, you know, pull it over, which some of it got left behind. So maybe we'll add another one there and another one here just to make sure. But you can always move them around however you wish. You can add more more loops or less loops, that's all up to you. I always kind of figure I go with the decorate in odds, and so I did the 3 loops. So you could always do 5, do a 4th one over here, and then a 5th one over here. So that's all up to you. And again, the wider and closer loop, then you just don't put out as much, or the big loops that go out farther that are closer together, you can do like that. So that just kind of all depends. Again, I just always use my Stampin' Dimensionals to secure it so that it goes over the lumpiness of the ribbon or sequin trim, and so that it gives a nice flat, even look whenever I put it on my project. So that is how I did that one there. This one here, I actually just looped the ribbon around and tied it with a little bit of metallic thread on the end. So here I have a Whisper White square, and I'm just going to take some of my Soft Sky ribbon, pull it around like this, and then I'm going to take some of the metallic thread and just tie a little knot into the ends here. So of course I did a double knot so that it was nice and secure. If you want, you can always add a little bit of snail adhesive to make sure it stays in place a little bit better for you, or if you have 3 hands, then that would be wonderful too, because that can sometimes be a little bit more difficult. And then of course you can always trim off your ends here, and then that just adds that little extra oomph there along the side, like I have here. So of course you would always put your greeting on top, or you could put it up here and down there if you wish. So that's just another fun way to add ribbon. Another similar way to this is you can always take a small little scrap and fold it in half, and then just tuck it behind your little, you know, your greeting or your focal point or something like that, just for that little loop of ribbon, a little bit of texture, a little bit of dimension just kind of peeking out with color. So even your little bitty pieces like this, you can always use on a fun project too. So the last one, this is the one that I've probably been doing the most. I've done this with the metallic thread, I've done it with baker's twine, and then of course the linen thread. So what I've done here is I've just kind of created lots of just loops to give sort of that rustic look. So what I do for that is I wrap it around my fingers, and depending on how big my greeting is, sometimes I have to spread my fingers out really wide. This one isn't that big, so you can see that my 4 fingers are actually wide enough to go on the outside of this image. If the image was bigger, for example, if it was this flower, I would want to spread my fingers out wide so that it would be wide enough that it would still stick out from the flower, because if I didn't, my loops would barely stick out of the flower because my fingers are just as wide. So now I'm just going to slide those loops off. So now I just have, you know, a whole bunch of loops just like this. One of the great things to do that I think gives that final touch is now I just twist it in the middle like a figure 8. And then after I get that figure 8, I'm just going to secure it with dimensionals in the center, so that I don't have to worry about losing my grip on it. So there you have that figure 8 of all those loops in the middle there. And now I'm just going to fan these out as wide or as skinny as I want. And again, securing it with the Stampin' Dimensionals to make sure that it is as wide or as skinny as I want. If you don't want a loose end like that, you can simply grab it with a dimensional and loop it around just like that. So if you want the more solid loops, I think you can probably see it better on the table than in my hand. If you want the more solid loops, you can just leave it alone like that. If you want the loops to be a little bit more spread out, then you can do it where you pull it apart with the Stampin' Dimensionals and add it like that. So let's go ahead, and I will finish this one with a few more Stampin' Dimensionals here. You guys all know I love Stampin' Dimensionals too, so that's why I'm an overuser of them, and you know, I technically would probably put one down here just to make sure it's nice and even. So there is that fabulous little greeting with those loops. This one I did really random and wide, just to kind of make it look a little bit more messy and rustic. So that is the final way to show you how to use ribbon in fun and different ways to use up those scraps and everything else. So I hope you learned something from one of these techniques and try it out on one of your next projects to use up some of your ribbon scraps. Let me know which one your favorite is in the comments below, and we'll see if it is one of my favorites. I think my favorite is probably either this one because I've been doing it for so long, or this one with the sequin trim just because I like the bling. But I've been doing a lot of these a lot more even lately, so I just thought I would share those with you. Be sure to check out my blog, laurastamppad.com, for more photos on these and more samples showcasing this awesome technique. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Be sure to subscribe if you're new by clicking down here. And check out some of my other video tutorials by clicking over here. I'll see you guys all next time. Happy stamping. Bye-bye.